Welcome to Things You Didn't Ask For and Didn't Need to Know. So this is Season 2. You may have been listening to us up until now where it's been Season 1. We've had a certain format that we've been sticking with, but we're going to mix it up a bit for Season 2. So every other week we're going to have the main topic that we would always have, but every other week than that we're going to have that preamble topics that we would have before our main topic in our other episodes. The purpose of this really is to break down the length of the episodes. We've been getting some feedback and we do listen. Many people are just finding that the episodes are a bit long, and it also allows us to produce an episode every week to you rather than one every 2 weeks, which we had been doing to date. So next week you'll be listening to what would normally be the preamble, where we come to you with random various facts that we find interesting for the last 2 weeks. But this week we're going to talk about the main topic of war.
War. War never changes.
As Ron Perlman said in a video game. So, I guess we won't be doing our usual what have you got for us, Barry, but I'm just going to do the intros. I'm Mart.
I'm Donal.
And I'm Barry.
So, I guess we can start by asking a very relevant question. Before I do, it's probably good at this point to remind you all, if you enjoy the show, please like, subscribe, do all those things to follow us, give us a bit of feedback. If you're on YouTube, we especially appreciate comments. We do read them all. And of course, you'll hit that bell to get notified and all that normal stuff that, people always ask people to do when you're listening to things. So, I'm going to start right out the gate by asking a question. Donal.
Yes.
Would you die for Ireland?
This is funny. I should actually get the clip.
I was going to say, maybe you can put the clip down below.
I should actually get the clip. Why should I
something.
even get the clip? Possibly and put it in here. Possibly.
Definitely, yeah.
But
I should immediately explain, because I've done the cardinal sin of podcasting. We just know each other too long. That's an in-joke, but it is kind of funny. Donal will tell the background.
I was walking down O'Connell Street one day years ago, and there was a person doing a vox pop where they just ask you just ask you a question.
You should probably explain what a vox pop.
A vox pop is like when a reporter or a journalist is doing a survey. It's basically a way to survey random people, and you put a mic in their face and you say, can I ask you a question? And you answer. He said, would you die for Ireland? He said, excuse me, would you die for Ireland? And I said, no. So
that was the end of that.
Yeah.
So it was a long time ago. Is your opinion still the same?
But it's funny how it's popped up, that one clip.
I was going to say, over the years,
every now and again.
It comes up every now and again.
10 years later, somebody will randomly message me, hey, is this Donal?
Yeah, because that clip was 19 years ago.
Yeah, and it's still circulating.
But would I die for Ireland? I think...
This is 19 years of maturity coming out
19 years of maturity. I have kids and everything since. Would I die for Ireland? I can genuinely say, if the circumstances were important enough, yes.
So what you're saying is, you just need a government with a good PR program, and then you will go to war.
Yes.
Interesting.
Well, I think any of us would, if you were in a kind of Vietnam War situation where there were invaders and you had to fight them off.
Yeah,
and suddenly there's
update
soldiers.
your references, Barry. You can Ukrainian war situation now.
I know, yeah, it didn't come into my head fast enough. But yeah, if someone's actually invading your country and they're going to be killing and all the rest of it, you're going to take up arms, and the odds are then that you are going to die for your country. So I think in the right circumstances, yeah, you'd kind of have to say yes, you would.
So you're saying yes as well?
Yeah, in the right circumstances, yeah.
Mart?
I mean, again, as Barry said, I would be very hesitant to, die for any cause, especially because I'm very conscious that a cause can be easily manufactured. And,
But here's the thing. If you say, no, I wouldn't die for Ireland, and then we did end up in that situation where we were invaded, the odds are you're going to die in Ireland.
Well, yeah, I think I would
If
actually,
not for
I can
Ireland.
already answer, actually, no. Would I die for Ireland? No. No. Would I die for my home or my family or, probably, yeah.
Also, no, I'd jump over the back wall and run away.
Yeah, no, that, I would
don't-
probably say it might be a yes. But again, as you were just about to say, Barry, and I completely agree, nobody really knows what the hell they're going to do in a circumstance like that
They'll
until they're
say
presented with it.
Oh, they'll say it. Oh, yeah, if I was there, I'd have kicked that guy's ass.
Yeah,
But-
yeah.
Well, I can genuinely say a lot of war is PR.
You should change that soundbite. War. War is PR.
But it's like a lot of war is that a government or someone in the government, or there's someone that has an agenda that they're pushing, and to achieve their end goal, the civilians of that country need to go out and fight.
Yeah, Paul Valery, who I'm not sure who he is, but he said, war is a massacre of people who don't know each other for the profit of people who know each other but don't massacre each other.
Wow. Yeah, nice
Sounds
one.
about right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I should say a new addition for season 2. That's, by the way, why we were kind of having a bit of a hiatus there between seasons. But this soundbite machine that Donal has introduced us to, which I was kind of against the idea of, bringing soundbites in by pushing a button. But this is a quote from I'm going to say from a video game narrated by Ron Perlman. It's been very many years ago.
War. War never changes.
Yeah, I like that. I'll never get sick of that one, though. Yeah. But anyway, so I guess the reason we picked war this week is we wanted to come to a kind of an interesting topic. And I guess since our wrapping up of last season and the opening of this season, we already had one war going on. And then, hey presto, another war came to the world.
Holy crap. Yeah.
Well, that's what
whole
my
new war
thinking
had
was.
started.
Yeah. And the irony
Since-
is, I think, because I know before the Ukraine war, I would have bet £1 million if I had it, that there was never going to be a stereotypical, traditional land war in Europe. I kind of thought that ended with World War II. War, despite what Ron Perlman told us, I was thinking war has changed. War is now, it's kind of more,
Keyboard focused.
Keyboard focused. It's more, but really more kind of proxy war kind of stuff. And they'd never be, well, in my mind, there would never be, one nation is going to march over your borders and grab your land. That was tried in the early part of this century and just kind of found not to work out overall. And I thought it was done with. And I thought now you have wars like Syria and stuff, which are more, I guess, more terroristy, if to use the word. And I know that...
Or proxy, where
yeah,
the
exactly.
different sides are funding different sides in different wars.
Yeah, and I was shocked at that. But the irony is, I think, what happened in Ukraine was such a stereotype, traditional, I guess, war where, two forces go, one force invades the other country and they're both soldiers go out with their uniforms, as opposed to the freedom fightery, terrorism, guerrilla warfare.
Yeah.
And that war, which is the very stereotypical picture of war, one side is calling it, it's not a war at all. And if you use that word, you're going to get put to the gulags. And then we have this other war where it's kind of more of a bombing a city flat with 2 million people in it, which isn't really war because there's no fighting back. And then that's being called a war, or it's kind of not a stereotypical war at all. But anyway, I guess before we really start this episode, because I know we always do it, the three of us, we don't really discuss these episodes in advance. I think it's better for the three of us to come together, have a conversation more authentically, but that can have its downsides where we might each have a different interpretation of what this episode that we're talking about is. And I don't even know myself. In my mind, war is a topic where you're talking about the concept of war, the philosophy of war, or are we just talking about the specifics of this particular war or that particular war?
I think a good question is, what is your definition of war? What's our definitions of war? And keep it in war in general type of thing.
Yeah, I thought it'd be, that's kind of what I took from it as well, that we were discussing war. We weren't really going to go into details on any particular war and whose fault it was, or, that kind of stuff. And I thought it was just going to be general talking about war down through the ages.
General talking about?
General talking about. So it was going to be a general overview.
Yeah.
No, we've started that now. We'll never stop.
Let's call it there now. That moment is past. Yeah, it's a good question. What is your definition of war? I don't even know how I would define that.
Well, I suppose you go with the dictionary definition of two nations fighting each other, I guess. Although if you go back far enough, it probably wasn't even that. It was probably my tribe against your tribe type of thing.
Well, the funny thing is, and this is where Mary and Margaret is really good with definitions. What is war? And it's a state of armoured conflict between countries or people.
Yeah.
And it's like, when you put it that way, it's like,
pretty much what I said.
Pretty textbook
pretty-
dictionary definition. So what about the Cold War? Was that a war?
Well, that's why it was the cold.
Was the war on drugs? Was that a war?
Now, actually, I'm glad you
Yes.
say that because, really? I was going to say how.
That's a brilliant-
Do
I
you
love
really
that
think
answer.
it's the war?
The war on drugs.
Do you think that was really a war?
Wait a second. What war are you talking about?
The war on drugs.
I
In
mean,
the
what?
80s, Ronald Reagan decided that it's like the war on terror. Basically, and this is, I'm blaming, looking at you, American government, when a government wants carte blanche to just basically have, a blank checkbook to keep throwing out the money at a cause. If you call it a war, well, now you're fighting a war, and war
Yeah.
is usually an existential.
Okay,
We
yeah.
got to win this thing. So in the 80s, Ronald Reagan said, "War on drugs." And if you look at the stats then and the stats now, it's worse.
Did either of you watch Narcos?
Yes.
No.
Yeah. So you know that from some of the information they were given there was really interesting. One of the things they were saying, and again, it's a TV show, dramatized. I don't know how factual the whole thing was, but one of the things they were saying is that it's when big business in America realized how much money was leaving the country, and that was having a detrimental effect on the economy. They lobbied Reagan to do something about it. Up until then, young people just killing themselves on drugs, they didn't care. Then they found out how much money was actually
Yeah.
billions leaving the country. They went, oh, hold on a minute now.
It
That's
actually
money
has
they
a-
could be spending in our businesses. He lobbied the government, and that's when Reagan started his war on drugs.
Okay, well, if we're to look at war on drugs, and if we're to look at the definition that I'm reading off the screen here, a state of armoured conflict against people or between people, that was definitely armoured.
Well, for starters, I presume you mean armed. I mean,
Sorry, armed, yeah,
But-
not armoured. I'm sure they were armoured.
The-
They
But
were
no,
armoured.
because, for example, there could be a state of armed conflict between people when a detective unit in Ireland who has arms engages with some criminal on the street who also has a gun. Armed conflict between people, I
It
think, has
doesn't
to be-
make it war. I
exactly,
guess.
but
Yeah,
definitely, like honestly, I don't even know what the definition of war is. I can't put my finger on it.
Yeah.
That's definitely close. I'm sure there's other definitions where you can split hairs, but I can tell you this much with absolute certainty: the war on drugs was a PR stunt to get a lot of money to put into a cause because of lobbying, and
It had absolutely zero effect.
and it had a zero effect. It put people in jail for like, oh, you had like a baggie of hash, put them away for 25 years. Then in that very state, and this, I've read an article about people who are in this state, somebody put away for 20 years or something in jail, and in jail in America isn't like a jail here in Ireland, which is kind of soft. Over there, you're like in a chain gang and all this kind of real hard time. They got that for not even enough weed or hash that would be like make you a dealer. It's not like a block of it you had, just a baggie.
Yeah.
Well, you had enough. War on drugs. This is a priority. You put away. Then that state made hash legal, and now you could buy 10 times that much legally in the street, and yet those people are still in
in
prison.
a
They didn't
pharmacy.
retrospectively.
Sorry, dispensary, I think they call it.
Exactly, not actually on the street. You can still buy it on the street, but it's ridiculous.
insane.
But
It's
the war on
absolutely
drugs
insane,
thing
yeah.
was, from top to bottom, it was not just a farce, but it was a definite orchestrated money spinning kind of a PR stunt by the government.
Yeah.
And the war on terror was exactly the same.
Pretty much.
Like you don't blow up terrorism with a tank. That's stupid. And ironically that's exactly what Israel are doing now. But anyway, that's for
I
conversation down the line.
do like Mark Twain's definition. I don't know if you call it. No, it's not a definition. His quote on war. Let's call it that.
Yeah.
God created war so that Americans would learn geography. And that's Mark Twain now. That he's going back a while, and
Wow.
it still holds
Yeah.
kind of true today. You know.
Well, I have a question for you in the meantime. Is there a just war?
Ah.
Is war ever good?
Yes, wait a second. I'm going to let the both of you answer this first.
Okay. Is there a just war? It's kind of hard when you think of what happened to Jewish people and Romani people and all the rest of it during World War II. It's hard to look at that and say, no, there isn't a just war. And, there's been several different conflicts in history that would be this. You could look at the same thing where there's genocide or something like that going on. It's very hard to say that. Yeah, no, this is not a just war. You can say that killing another person is never justified. Is one moral view you can take on it. So, why is it okay when government sanctions that killing.
I don't think you can have that view and also believe in a just war.
Well, that's the thing. That's where it becomes
They're polar opposites, yeah.
It becomes a real. I don't want them. I don't want them killing 6 million Jews, and I don't want 21 million people to die. But at the same time, it's a war. You're killing people. People are dying. People's sons are going off and killing other people, and you're bombing cities, and women and children are getting killed. It's hard. It's one of those things where you kind of go, yeah, there's no such thing as a just war, but at the same time, we don't want them killing people. I don't know where to go with that. I honestly don't know.
I do. Go on, Mert.
Well, you go on first, then, if you have a...
No, go on. I'm interested to see.
I mean, I'm going to say straight away, for starters, just if you go and boil it down to its most basic component, is it ever right to kill another person? And I don't want to dip into our death penalty episode again, but yeah, if there's a person, running around with a gun, killing loads of people around them, and you can stop that person by just killing them somehow, I don't know, imagine you have a Acme anvil hanging above his head and you can cut the rope, then of course it's justified to do it, because if you allow something to happen through your inaction, you are definitely to some degree responsible. And that's only if you start pointing fingers and wanting to assign personal responsibility. But even, if you have a choice, make one person die or let 10 people die, it's kind of a simple basic math, really. So, yeah.
It's a trolley problem.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Yeah, so there are times when it's the right thing to do to kill someone. And once you accept that, then you can apply it at a nation level and then that essentially means war.
So Germany were doing a bad thing. They were, say the Adolf Hitler regime was doing a bad thing. They were killing lots of people in concentration camps. So obviously that's not why people went to war against them. People didn't go to war against Germany at the time because
they didn't even know them.
No, they didn't even know this happened until near the end of the war. But so they went to war because he was land grabbing and he was making war himself, so people just went to war against him back. Kind of, he started it. So you don't have that justification for that war, that he was doing this evil stuff. He was doing other evil stuff, if you count, invading other people's countries and stuff like that, evil, which, you can't do. So you're sending your soldiers out there, but at the time, and I think in modern wars it's more prevalent, you say, they're the bad guys, they're the good guys. Like we say, the Ukraine are the good guys and Russia are the bad guys because Russia invaded Ukraine. But I know for a fact, I'm assuming for a fact that both sides commit atrocities because it's war.
Of course, yeah.
And when you push humans far enough, they will, well, some of them don't need to be pushed that far, but they will commit atrocities. They will do bad things in the name of that war. So even though it may be justified, I'm going fighting against the evil Russian invaders, but then you commit atrocities. Does that take away from the justification of the war?
Not at all. It takes away from your... No, I don't... It's a whole other conversation, and it takes away from your own personal self. But I think anyone who goes in war, and this is now going away from the question of the justification of war completely, but any person in war and any behaviour that they undertake, I think it can't be judged by someone who has never been to war. And I'm thinking back to a time where, remember when Iraq
invaded
Americans?
Kuwait?
No, but when the Americans went into, was it Iraq? I think first before they went into Afghanistan, and there was this big deal because some woman soldier was like, I'm going to say, torturing the prisoners by tying them up and all
Ali
this kind
Karab.
of. Yeah. Now I'm sure that's happened 1,000 times since, and the media doesn't care. But the first time they got footage of it, it was a story, and then every other time it was like, yeah, that's boring now. So they just didn't cover it. But, I mean, I know at the time, I was thinking, it's awful, obviously, and, something should be done about this. But also, you're looking at people who are sitting on their couch watching TV, judging a person who's in a war, which is a kind of a circumstance no one who hasn't been there doesn't know about. I don't know about it. Nobody knows.
And I suppose from the foot soldier's point of view, whether or not a war is justified is a moot point. Like
yeah, it's a different thing completely. But
now,
anyway, I don't know where you're landing.
I'm not.
Barry, what is it good for?
Absolutely nothing. But every time I have a list of wartime quotes, and one of the ones, something you said there made me think about someone sitting on a couch. I am tired and sick of war. Its glory is all moonshine. It is only those who have neither fired a shot nor heard the shrieks and groans of the wounded who cry aloud for blood, for vengeance, for desolation. War is hell. And that's from William Sherman.
Oh,
They should name a tank after him. That's a good quote.
That's a good quote. Yeah, he's a General Sherman. Yeah, so Civil War era guy, and what you were saying, like people judging what's happening to other people who aren't there and who aren't involved in it, or
Yeah,
people who are
you
saying
can't know.
like we're going to invade that country, but the people who are saying it will never have to see their friend die or face an IED or any of that kind of stuff. They're the ones pulling the strings, but it's the old decide they're going to war. It's the young who die. That's another half quote from somebody else.
So ultimately, I guess what you're saying is, war, is it justified? Yeah or nay?
It can be.
Okay, Donald, you were saying you had the answer.
so here's the answer. First of all, it's all about context, because it's like if I would never go out and steal, to quote Les Mis,
A policeman's helmet.
no, I would never steal a loaf of bread. Okay, but if I was starving or if the kids were starving, all of a sudden it becomes justifiable to steal a loaf of bread. Okay, now increase the loaf of bread, a billionfold.
That's a big loaf of bread.
It is, and now you got the size of Ukraine.
The bread basket
all of a
of Europe.
sudden, all of a sudden it makes sense for Russia to want to do this.
Well,
A lot of the
not really. Your parallel breaks down because
no,
you're
no,
saying...
no. The parallels absolutely break down.
Yeah, okay.
But from a crazy person's point of view, it makes sense. Sorry, the point I was making is there is not justifiable. It makes sense for crazy people or for people under a certain point of duress to go, yes, this is worth it.
Okay, but you're looking at it from an individual person's perspective. What I was really asking is more high-level philosophical principles. Is war ever justified?
Well, okay. So
And if you're going to say, well,
and-
crazy people can go to war...
No,
that
and
doesn't-
from the justified point, from the high level point of view, take away the good and the bad. Take away the concept of, Barry, you were saying something is evil.
Well,
were
we
you?
can even just make it more simple and say everyone thinks they're the good guys. This isn't like that sketch. Wait, are we the baddies?
yeah.
Wearing the SS uniform.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like if you take away the thing of an objective good or an objective bad, then all that's left is goals. You have a goal and you will attempt to achieve the goal. And that isn't bad or good. That's just a fact. You're just going to try to do something.
Okay, but if you take away the, I guess, moral good and the moral bad out of the equation, the whether it's justified element can still remain. But now it boils down
Exactly.
to, if you want something, then go to war to take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's justification.
Yeah.
Whereas it's really only...
Well, that worked for thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it did. I guess in my mind I was asking the question with the implicit kind of presence of the moral good and the moral bad of it.
You see,
But
that's where I would see it differently. There is no morality in it. It's not bad to go to war. It's not good to go to war.
I mean,
You've left us. You've stumped
yeah,
us
you see,
on that one.
I get what you're saying because you
Yeah.
see, if you can kind of zoom out really high to the macro level of the universe,
Yep.
right? You're standing up at the high level of overseeing the whole galaxy. Whether some ant on this anthill fights the other one doesn't matter to
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And that's the
Okay.
standpoint that you're
Yeah.
adopting to
Yeah.
answer the question.
Except that we're the ants.
Well,
so
yeah.
when you zoom into that level,
And what I'm saying is, yeah, me and Barry answered it as ants standing on the hill.
If I
Whereas
answer it as an ant, then yes, if somebody tries to do something that I don't agree with, they're wrong. But now that you know that you're looking down at this from, that you're looking at the ant and that you're the ant, I can't justify it any other way other than saying it's not good or bad. It's just like,
Yeah, so I think to summarize your answer, is war justified? Yes.
yes, 100%.
If somebody has something you want and you want to take it, then if you think you can do.
And that's why I think things like the United Nations are so important. It's like when enough people agree to the same thing, that's how you get that's how you get stability. And that's what we need. We need stability by everyone agreeing with each other. If literally nobody agreed with Israel, the war against Gaza and Israel would be very different.
Oh, yeah.
If literally nobody agreed with Putin, literally the war within would be very different. That war would be very different. So the problem is, like, war is a result of people who have influence thinking like I'm thinking.
But I think ultimately what you're saying, and I agree with this actually, let's say on an individual level, if an intruder breaks into your house, you call the cops. You don't try to fight them off yourself, you call the cops.
Well, you fight them off yourself if you have to.
But if you have to, but you have the option of calling the cops and not
If you hear
engaging
them-
in a
if you hear
visceral
them
life or
breaking in,
death
they
battle.
haven't. Yeah, they haven't.
Go into
actually
the panic
broken in
room.
yet.
Yeah. So that's what humans have on an individual level in most civilized societies. And that's the option. But if you then zoom up one level to the kind of nation state level, if you're a nation state and someone else breaks into your house, you don't have a phone to call the cops. All you have to do is fight them off yourself.
Yeah.
And that's why, as Donald said, things like the UN and I would say NATO, but I don't know if did they cause the war in Ukraine or not. But that kind of puts it gives nation states an option rather than immediately
They're
going
the
to war.
cops. UN are the
Essentially,
cops,
they're
yeah.
the cops that keep nation states in line.
Yeah.
And if they
Well, in
weren't,
theory.
in theory and mostly in fact,
Mostly, yeah.
And if they weren't there, there probably would be a lot more wars. So
Well, I mean, remember we started talking about what we were going to talk about for this episode. We were talking about war, and you were saying now that we have 2 wars, and I was saying, well, there's actually, so I looked it up. There's 32 current wars running between the wars on drugs, wars on terror, Ukraine.
yeah, but
Syria is still going, and then there are dozens of civil wars and stuff going on all over the place.
Yeah,
So
wow.
there's 32 conflicts currently going on in the world, and I think that number has stayed fairly. I'd have to look into that, but I think that number has been fairly stable for years. There's been always been a lot of
Yeah.
conflicts.
Oh, there has
It's-
been, yeah.
It's the big ones that we hear about.
although I do also feel like, again, I have to reject the war on terror as being a war. That's a ridiculous concept. It's a ridiculous mislabeling, misnomer
We're talking about justifying it.
done deliberately.
And we're talking about, whether or not the war on terror, the war on drugs, any of those are actual wars. I'll give you another quote from Mahatma Gandhi this time. What difference does it make to the dead, the orphans and the homeless, whether the mad destruction is wrought under the name of totalitarianism or in the holy name of liberty or democracy? Which I really like that quote. It's because it brings it back down into the micro level, into the individual. Women, children, and men, and people are dying. Cities are being destroyed. To them, it doesn't matter whether there's justifiable war. It doesn't matter if it's it doesn't matter what the reason for it is. All they know is that they're dead. Well, all their families and the people that have lost them know is that they've lost people and people have died. They've lost their homes. They've lost their jobs. They've lost everything because somebody somewhere decided, there's terrorists in your town, or we want the land that you're on, or whatever happened, whatever the justification they have for their war, it doesn't matter to the dead.
Well, it does and it doesn't. I still feel like Gandhi's point is valid, but, people go into war knowing they may die. People who are in war will willingly give their lives, knowing the outcome. I'll never be around to see it, but it can be overall worth it. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
but
glad.
what about people who are drafted?
Well, it sucks to be them. I mean, yeah. The biggest victims in the Ukraine war, I don't know, is it the Ukrainians or the Russian soldiers? Because vast majority of them don't want to be there. And it's,
Yeah. I'd say virtually none of them want to be there.
yeah, that's kind of a,
Yeah.
people who are drafted kind of thing. But my point is, if everyone had the opinion of Gandhi, I guess, well, it doesn't matter whether a war is fought in a totalitarian, cause or a cause of liberty and freedom. Well, it'll matter to the generations and generations who will be living under a totalitarian state because no one stood up and fought when the chance was there.
Mart will show Gandhi.
No, I'm just saying, I can see Gandhi's point, definitely, and I agree with it because he's right.
Yeah.
But also there's another side to that coin as well. I mean, you're right. If some woman has lost her whole family, or I guess it doesn't matter who, woman, man, child, whatever, what the war was about may not matter to that person ever. They don't care. They've just lost everything. But at the same time, like, again, I just do feel there are wars that should be fought.
Okay, so I have a question, right? I don't know how much you've been following Irish politics and the Irish Army and things. There was a thing that happened in the Irish Army recently. There was like a 3-lock system where the government, the UN, and someone else. I think I'm definitely mixing it up. The 3 parties had to agree so that Irish soldiers would go somewhere.
Okay.
Okay, now
And it has to be said on a peacekeeping
on
mission.
a peacekeeping mission.
They can't-
Okay,
they
yeah,
can't go to a
exactly,
conflict.
exactly.
Can
Now,
I just establish the baseline? I presume all of our listeners know this, but like, Ireland, as a neutral country, doesn't go and contribute in any wars directly. But we do have a military presence in a number of places in a purely peacekeeping capacity. What is it with the UN? What are the guys with the blue helmets?
Yeah, UN.
The UN, yeah, with the UN. So,
We also have allies that we do support in other ways. American warplanes landing in Shannon, for example.
oh, that's a good question. Do you think the America? Because I'll get back to the thing I was going to say. Do you think it's right for the planes to land in Shannon? That's a big bone of contention.
I think we have to answer another question before you can answer that question because they're sequential and related.
Should they pay duty free?
No, well, do you think, like Ireland, as a neutral country, do you think that neutrality is a valid position for any country to take?
Not really.
Donald?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Well, I think not really, as well. So why do you think
What
it's
did I say?
okay for a
Yeah,
country to hide behind the coattails of their bigger brother and tell them to fight for them?
Because maybe their GDP can support an army.
Well, ironically, Ireland is one of the healthiest GDPs in Europe.
Yeah.
If
Yep.
you look at the numbers and don't look too much into them.
But the other part of that is well, you don't have to send your entire army. You don't have to draft your population and send them all off to war. You can support a justified conflict by sending support in logistics, medical aid through your military. You don't, like I said, you don't have to send your entire army out there, but you can send your special forces and just have them doing small missions here and there to help the cause or whatever it is. So you're not going to stretch your GDP, or you're not going to put yourself
No,
into
true,
the
true,
poorhouse
yeah,
by doing
yeah.
that. And let's not forget, we stayed neutral through World War II, and made several mistakes at that time as well. Like our president at the time sending, or I don't know if he was president or Taoiseach at the time, sending condolences to Germany when they found out Adolf Hitler was dead.
Yeah.
To be fair, though, that's a bad look.
Yeah.
No doubt. But, at the time we had big beef with the British, and suddenly along comes this other little mustache guy and says, those people you hate, I'm going to kill them all and fight them. And,
The
blow up
enemy
their-
of our enemy is our friend.
And to quote Jimmy Carr, say what you like about Adolf Hitler, but at least he killed Adolf Hitler.
Better than anyone else can say.
Yeah. Can't take that away from him.
So, to go back a few steps,
Yeah.
should Ireland be neutral? What do you think?
Well, I mean, it's not even should Ireland be neutral. Like, frankly, I'm glad Ireland is neutral. Long may it last, because it suits me fine. I'm happy that other countries will pay into wars. Other countries will, risk their own people's lives, whereas I can stay at home playing my Xbox and I don't care, because it's got no skin off my nose. That suits me perfect. But I'm saying if you analyze the concept of neutrality from an objective level, especially when you're part of a big trading bloc like the EU, it is kind of, now, we'll leave you alone for a while, but, we're getting the benefits of being part of NATO and part of the EU without
Is
actually...
Ireland a member of NATO?
That's what I was going to say. We are not a member of NATO.
No, I didn't think we were.
Huh,
We're
okay.
not a member of NATO, but we do have, even though we're so small as a country, I'd have to check, I'd have to confirm that we did have a seat in the Security Council.
And we're sitting there going,
But the
I hope no one notices we're neutral.
Security Council, is that UN? Is that a UN body or?
Well, I'm going
I
to say
don't.
I threw it out there, and I don't really know. I kind
Yeah.
of was an assumption on my part too.
This is another thing. Anyone who's
Strike
new,
that from the record.
Anyone that's new to things didn't ask for, didn't need to know. You will notice by now that we are very well rehearsed, not rehearsed, researched.
No, but
we research these things down.
I do know that if you are a member, to be a member of NATO, you have to give a certain percentage of your
blood.
GDP, your blood, effectively, to NATO.
Okay, so let's scratch over that then, since I'm definitely wrong on that one. But let's say still we're having all the benefits of being in the EU and essentially being in that kind of bloc without having to contribute militarily, and it suits us fine. But I think from a real objective standpoint, it's kind of an unreasonable position to take, especially because we kind of know if anyone's going to invade us. No one else is going to say, well, you're not NATO, so we're just going to leave you alone. They're not going to. There's going to be an intervention, and we're going to be, helped to a certain degree anyway.
But I think it depends on who invades us. Like, if China decided to invade us, I think most of the world would just be like, well, Ireland is Chinese now.
Well, yeah, maybe you're right, actually. Maybe you're right. I just feel like the whole position of being neutral, it's kind of adopt that position for as long as you can, but then if somebody decides to invade, they're going, you're going to probably get assistance from other nations anyway. I don't think that you need to worry about it. And again, if we weren't neutral and we had an army, we're not going to fight off like Poland fighting off Germany in the 30s or whatever it was. Yeah. That just was never going to work out anyway. But anyway, since you've now, I guess, trashed that one out, you were asking about planes landing in Shannon, because there was a bit of controversy. I'll just throw it out there for the kind of bit of background to anyone listening who maybe, I don't know, is young and doesn't remember this. But when the Gulf War happened initially, American planes were flying from, I think, Iraq, landing in Shannon, in Ireland, refueling there and restocking, and then flying on over to America.
And I think vice versa too.
And vice versa, yes. And as a neutral country, essentially, we were contributing to the war effort by allowing military planes to refuel in our neutral airport. And there was even more controversy when it was found out that these planes contained some prisoners that ended up in Guantanamo Bay, and there was controversy around that, torture and stuff.
I wonder, did anyone throw out the point that we are a neutral country? Iraq are more than welcome to land their planes in Ireland too.
And of course, because Shannon were like, well, hey, every time the planes are going through here, we're making money.
They're making bank, because they charge, This airport charges for every time an airplane lands. So, they'd be making money.
So anyway, Donald, you were asking, is that a valid thing? And,
Well, look at this thing. Since 2002, close to 3 million US troops have gone through Shannon Airport. So,
that's a lot.
100% it's farcical to say that Ireland don't support are neutral from this point of view.
Yeah.
We're only neutral in the way that we're not paying for stuff. As you said, we're only getting.
That's how Switzerland stayed neutral in World War II. It was like, hey, we're neutral. Also, we'll take all your Nazi gold and hide it for you if you don't hurt us.
But also Allied gold. We'll take the Allied gold as well.
Well, yeah.
And Axis. Any, just gold. We'll just take anything.
But is it correct for them to land? It's like,
well, personally, just my own opinion is that America are our allies. Therefore, yes.
Yeah, and I was of the opinion this whole neutrality thing is a bit of a farce anyway. So we'll dance around it as long as we can until some push comes to shove and forces us to just say, okay, fine, we're not. And in the meantime, do the odd little thing like that to kind of, keep the peace and allow our neutrality to persist.
Yeah.
So would you be happy if the government said, like, okay, things are heating up globally, we should increase our military budget like tenfold or something?
Well, I mean, no, but at the same time,
well, really, what I'd like to see the Irish government doing, militarily wise, is to beef up our navy.
Yeah,
and I mean beef up our navy big time, that we can have an actual. Maybe ring of steel was what came into my head, but
that sounds hard. I like it.
A lot of boats basically going around our island to protect our interests and to stop things like big, huge boats full of drugs being brought into the country the odd time, and to stop things like certain nations' massive fishing factory ships coming into our waters, and obviously the navy needs to be much bigger than it is now. Don't want to give away trade secrets, but I think we only have 2 functioning. I think we have 4 or 5 naval vessels, but I think we only have. Now again, I stand to be corrected.
That really doesn't sound like a lot for an island.
We don't have a lot
functioning ships, simply because we don't have the crews for them, I think.
Yeah.
And of course, our Coast Guard is a voluntary organisation, so we need to beef them up. I think that's what I'd like to see the government doing when it comes to military stuff. Now, of course, we do have the Irish Rangers, who are Ireland's answer to the SAS or the Navy SEALs.
Yeah.
And they're highly regarded internationally as a special forces group. They're tough as old boots. And they have done a lot of missions. Like, they're the ones that go in when our citizens are in Afghanistan and the Taliban are taken over again. The Irish Rangers are the ones that went over and got to the airport and got our citizens and got them to the planes and got them out.
Yeah. Okay,
And several other nations as well.
Are they the guys who were in that movie, The Siege of Jadotville?
No, they were regular Irish soldiers.
Really?
They were not special forces. They were regular Irish soldiers sent on a peacekeeping mission.
Yeah,
Did
that's
you
a movie.
see that film, by the way?
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic.
Oh, yeah, we've all seen it. Yeah, of
I
course.
think you should link it in the YouTube thing, because when
Okay.
I say Siege of Jadotville,
Yeah.
if anybody decides to look it up,
it's-
it's a good movie on
Yeah.
Netflix.
Yeah, it's a good movie. And
Based on a
I'm
true
not-
story.
Yeah, I'm not going to say any more about it because watch it and then read up on what happened to the soldiers afterwards. It's interesting.
But so I think that there should be a massive more amount of money spent on the army in Ireland, because I'm reading here the total defence budget will be 1.23 billion in 2023.
Okay.
So, now that might be spent over a few years, okay? But basically, we are spending over $1 billion on the army, okay, on our military budget. So, if way more were spent on it, then, like, Ireland is now seen as a backdoor for drugs into Europe, okay?
And human trafficking.
And human trafficking, and there was flaming Russian boats floating around the lines, the internet lines, the fiber optic lines that go across to America and everything. They were like surveying that area where those cables were underground. Like, there's loads of stuff happening. And Barry, as you were saying, it's like, again, I'm just talking out of my ass here. Effectively, I don't know all the numbers, but it's my understanding that Ireland could do with a better budget, because we do have responsibility. I do think that the UN is amazingly great. I'm 100% go UN, okay? And from that point of view, we should be paying more into defences, because if anything happens on our coast that needs a big military force, we have to go over to England and they'll help us, definitely. So there's not an issue. But as you were saying, I think it's coming to the point where it's about time that we put up.
Or shut up.
Yeah. Also, would the British help us if we said, hey,
They
help us?
have.
Oh, really? And also, another question. Would you be happy if the government said, hey, give us more taxes then? You already complain about taxes.
No, you see, I would gladly pay, and I pay my taxes always after I got royally screwed for not paying my taxes before.
I will always obey the law.
will
Ever since I got
always-
caught not obeying the law.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's like, I found out personally that Ireland has a sheriff, and he visited me. So, I will always pay my taxes, okay? Now, I'm totally all for everyone should pay their taxes and do what's right and all this kind of stuff, to a certain degree. I would gladly pay more money into my taxes if I knew that I could go up to Dublin and ridiculous knackers weren't going to be, threatening me and the kids type of thing. If the place isn't safe, if the money, if increase the tax as much as you want, if it's going to lead to safety.
Are you suggesting we put soldiers on the streets of Dublin and shoot the scroats? Because I'd fucking vote for that.
Well, wait, because you've lost me.
Here's
we were
what I'm
talking
saying.
about increasing military spending, and now you're talking about safety on the streets of Dublin. Unless you're suggesting what Barry's saying.
I would be behind that.
Here's what I'm saying.
Okay,
It's like, you can't, if you just increase the military budget of the country and not the military budget of the police, that's ridiculous.
Or the budget of the police.
I was going to say, if you're calling the military budget of the police, now
budget-
you're gone full America.
The budget of the police. You have to, this is what I mean by it's a holistic
Okay, you're
thing.
talking security spending.
Yeah, but it's security spending, but it's not just security spending. It's like, you have to increase money into education. You have to increase money into hospitals, in like health. There's a lot of things that have to be fixed.
Yes.
Okay.
And remember, the pot of money is finite. And you can't take all of people's money in taxes. You have to leave them something.
Well, I mean, why do you have to leave them something?
Okay. Wow.
I like to be able to buy food.
Even
That's
Donald
just-
Trump
that's just
wouldn't
me.
propose those taxes.
That's just me.
Benz.
I'm an outlier, I'm sure, but I like to be able to pay for food.
We've
and
gone away from
mortgage.
talking about war.
I'll throw out a question to you, well, it's kind of a question, I suppose, because there is a theory I've seen out there that says, and it goes back a while in time as well, that all wars are about money. That every war that's ever been fought is about money. Personally, I agree with that.
I don't
agree.
I do, yeah, I do. I think every single war, you can trace it back to money.
Well,
I mean,
okay, trace
because
it back.
Because money has got to be a big factor in any war, you could start drawing the lines back to it. But I don't know. Sometimes I look at, why did the US intervene in Europe in 45 or whatever, 44?
Why did they do it?
I mean, yeah, were they being paid or what? They were being paid by sitting on their side of the Atlantic, loaning money to both sides, while these former empires bankrupted themselves from all
then
the
the
money.
military-industrial complex said, "Hey, we'd make more money."
There wasn't a military-industrial complex then. That's the funny thing.
There was. They existed from
The Americans,
World
as a
War I.
nation, barely existed. It was only a few decades old at that stage. Like, say, the 40s, right? When was America really started? 40 or 50 years before?
No, what?
17-something, I think, wasn't it? That's,
Well, I mean, famously 1776.
They were just out of fighting the Indians when they went into World War.
one.
Well, say
One was when they industrialized big style.
Yeah.
And then two, they
it
industrialized
was within
even more.
It was within a
But-
generation that they went from literal Indians.
But there were people.
To,
There were industrialists in America that realized the government are lending and our banks are lending money to this conflict. But you know what? If we actually were a part of this conflict, we could make and sell tanks and airplanes and
yeah, maybe. To be fair, I don't know. This isn't the hill I'm picking.
I don't know.
and I'm only speculating. I don't know what those people were thinking, obviously, but war is always good for profit.
Well, okay. That is. I think it's a Ferengi rule of acquisition, but also it's true.
And do you remember when I said at the start of that this theory goes back a while? I was talking about Socrates. He was the one he's said,
Yeah, okay.
war
You
is
know,
always about money.
I almost was
God
rejecting
damn it.
that, but when I think about it, actually, I kind of can see it. Yeah.
It's always about money. And I've said to
I
someone else...
I hate to go against the old sock man.
Yeah. But they said, well, what about the Crusades? And they were massively about
But they
money.
were flaming religion.
Yeah, but they were money.
Yeah, money, 100% money.
100%.
Actually, go on.
Okay, so let's say, let's take this down to the most childish level of understanding about war. Hitler wanted loads of land and stuff, and he wanted to be powerful. And the way to do that was with money and power. Yeah. Okay, so, but I think the reason that England got into the war and the reason that America got into the war wasn't because of money. Now, they were dragged in. It's money. It's because of money that they got dragged in, but they had to they had to enter the war. I don't think
They didn't
England.
want to.
I don't think England went
100%
into.
didn't want to go
Yeah,
into the war.
exactly. Yeah.
No, they were dragged into it.
Yeah,
But
so,
of course...
so I agree that possibly the thing that started the wars is always about money.
And
But
that-
the thing that finishes it isn't necessarily always about money.
Yeah, but that's not the point. The point is that all wars are about money.
Yeah, I know, but it just doesn't sit well
Like,
with me.
But if you start a war for money, which is all wars, the fact that people are defending against you doesn't mean that the reason you started it is wrong or
No,
wrong.
yeah,
but
no, I
that's
know
not
what you
the
mean.
reason
Yeah,
you started
yeah.
it.
Okay,
Because
yeah.
war, you have to look at what started the war.
Yeah.
And it's always money.
Tell me this: are you worried? Because if you look at what started, say, what made World War II be not just a war or a great war, as they were calling it, but to be a world war, is Hitler invaded Poland, started going across Europe. The UK fought back. They were losing. France fell, which was a shock. And then all of a sudden the Americans come over the Atlantic, storm Normandy Beach. And when all that's happening, suddenly, randomly, on the other side of the world,
Slight oversimplification.
Yeah,
But,
I have to,
all of a
because
sudden.
Yeah.
But
we,
go on.
we
yeah,
want to
go
keep
on.
it simple.
Yeah.
All of a sudden,
but I want our listeners to know that it's very much a simplification.
Japan punches America in the nose.
All of a sudden.
And now we have the Pacific War. And it's like, when you just look at all that play out, it's like, okay, this is happening over here, a country that had nothing to do with it butted in, then another country that had nothing to do with anything butted into the other country that had also had nothing to do with it. It's like a bar fight where suddenly everyone's fighting in every corner of the room, and it's like, what's going on here?
If you look it up, there's actually a really funny
No,
thing.
I'm sure there's
of
reasons, by the way, but yeah.
World War II explained in the terms of a bar fight.
Yeah,
That's
I
really funny.
actually, I was going to say,
It's really well
because
done. It's
in
funny.
this story, in this bar fight, okay, yes, there's a bar fight, but that's because Johnny in the bar knows that Patrick in the bar had slept with his woman and
you don't need
stolen
to
his
get
chickens.
lost in the
No,
analogy
but what
either.
I'm saying is, it's 100%. There is so much history behind all of these things.
Yes, I'm not saying I don't understand it. I know there's reasons. And yet at the same time, when you look at how it escalated, and really things that seemed relatively unconnected jumped in, and then you look at, say, the world of today. You can pick Russia and Ukraine, or you can pick Israel and Palestine, or, join in a lot of other dots. I guess, do you feel we're in danger now of another world war right now?
I have a super theory about this, Barry.
Well, go on, Donald.
I don't know what your theory
You
is.
can't announce
No,
your
as
theory.
in what?
and then-
No, as in, will I go first? Or
Yes,
Go ahead.
sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
so here's what I think is going to happen, right? Will I give you my brief overview? Will I?
Yeah.
In as much as I can do it brief.
This is your
Okay.
prediction of the wars of today and where they're going, is it?
Yes, this is my prediction of the wars today. Okay, so first of all, there's this thing called BRICS, okay, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa.
Okay.
Okay, they're kind of in a coalition together. Now, they're in a coalition together, and the whole of Africa has its own coalition. Okay, and then Europe has its own coalition. So there's all these different coalitions. Okay, sorry again. So there's all these different coalitions. What's going to happen is something is going to kick off somewhere, and the other coalitions will be dragged into it. Again, literally like the bar fight, or again, literally like World War II. Okay, so when you look at the flashpoints that are super flashpoints, Xi Jinping has said, okay, he literally said, "I'm not going to attack Taiwan. I'm not going to attack Taiwan." Do you know about the whole Taiwan?
Yes.
China.
I didn't know that he said he wouldn't attack it.
Oh,
In fact,
he said
I
it.
thought he specifically said he would.
Because that sounds like the board of directors coming out of the football club and saying, no, we have full faith in our manager. He has our vote of confidence.
Yep. No, he said, "I'm definitely not going to attack Taiwan until 2026.
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes
So
a
he even
specific
put
time
literally a date on it because that's when the way when you play a computer game and you play like Age of Empires, and I might be losing some of the audience here, but you play a game or you do something, or you're playing poker and you're going to
building up your
You're building
resources.
up your resources. Xi Jinping has clearly said, "Oh, my navy isn't at a strong enough point where I can attack Taiwan yet, because attacking Taiwan is going to be incredibly difficult."
And also, he knows it's going to bring in.
Exactly, he knows he's going to bring in America because America cannot let Taiwan.
Yeah.
In
fall.
fact, the whole America way of dealing with Taiwan was to be always very vague on, well, we will support them if there's a war kind of thing. But then Joe Biden specifically elaborated and said, we will put troops on the ground in Taiwan if China invade.
Yeah.
So that's like a definite recipe for World War III.
Yeah, so
sitting there on the table ready to go.
100% that's a flashpoint. If you don't know about the whole Taiwan, the oncoming definite, in my opinion, definite oncoming war between Taiwan and China, definitely worth looking into. There's also a massive thing in Ethiopia. Like when we think of Ethiopia, we think of starving kids and that kind of thing from
1980s.
from the 80s. What Ethiopia is actually is an incredibly powerful super powerhouse in Africa because they're damming the Nile to make the biggest dam in the world now.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
I read about that a long time ago.
Yeah. It's happening, and so
Everybody down.
soon they will have control over the whole of Egypt.
Yeah, because whatever they let through is what
Yeah.
Egypt gets. That's
100%. And like an incredible percentage of the population of Egypt and all along the line, the Nile, are living on the Nile. Okay. And then there's so many different kind of potential flashpoints that if something happens, it's hard to see it as just kicking off and big flare up being just in its own little area.
Because, like we were saying, if China invade Taiwan, America are allies with Taiwan. They will go to defend them, as will Australia.
Which is literally what China is looking for.
Yeah, and
Why would China be looking for that?
Looking for America to enter the war.
Yeah.
Because they would kick America's ass.
Well, just because you
Is
know...
what they think.
Well, probably what they know. But I'm sure if China invaded Taiwan tomorrow, or 2026, and if America said, you know what, I know what we said, but we couldn't be arsed. I'm sure China isn't going to be like, oh man, I wanted to fight. They're going to be like, excellent. We have the best microchip processing country in the world.
Yep.
Something like
And
90% of the high-level chips. That'll
and
do.
then they'll start going, what's that country over there got?
Well,
Well,
then
yeah.
they will definitely go. They will definitely. It's already. They've already planned to take over. I'm pointing in the air here, but as like I'm seeing the map, they're already planned to take over. They're going to take over Taiwan. They're going to attack Taiwan. After that, they are going to take over Indonesia.
Indonesia, Philippines.
Yeah, and the Philippines in that area.
Malaysia, yeah.
All of a sudden, you have America. All of a sudden, you see, from our point of view, Mart, we're like, why would China do this?
But wait,
from
that would
China's
be-
point of view,
I can see exactly why China would do it.
Like Taiwan, the Philippines, Indonesia, and all that, they're all, they'd be called South Pacific, wouldn't they?
yeah.
Yeah, they'd be South Pacific.
I think so, yeah,
Which
yeah.
means that China aren't starting a land war in Asia, so they're not.
They're safe.
They're safe on that.
They're safe.
Because I'm sure that's what they've been playing out for years, going, we can't do it. It's a land war in Asia. No, someone says, no, it's Southeast.
But what they will
It's the
do
South
is they'll control all of the sea, which cuts off 100% cuts off the trade the power that America has in the world, and it's not going to happen.
Well, I think Taiwan
And that's what I think is going to do World War III.
is the most important bit, because I didn't really think about Indonesia or anything like that, but because essentially the whole reason Taiwan is important to China, allegedly on the face of it, one China policy, Taiwan is still China
Yeah.
as far as they officially declare. But as you said, Barry, when it comes back to money, I think Taiwan produced something like 70% of all the microchips in the world and 90% of all of the super high-end microchips. So basically that's the kind of chip processor of the world.
Yeah.
And currently it doesn't belong to America, but it's in the West, dealing with the West, and especially with AI and
And isn't there a thing?
GPUs being so
Isn't there a
important.
thing as well where the American Trade Secretary has said they've been playing cat and mouse with the GPU, the graphics card manufacturers. They're saying you can't ship these
Yeah.
particular types of graphics cards to China.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so they'll go, okay, well, these aren't them types of graphics cards because we've changed this one little thing. And then the Trade Secretary's go, right, we're changing the law, those aren't allowed either. And they go, okay, well, now these ones are different.
I
And
don't
they're
know.
constantly- and
I don't
think-
know about that, but yeah.
I think
Yeah, no,
just
yeah.
in the last couple of days, the Trade Secretary has said, if you don't stop fucking around, we are going to stop fucking around.
Yeah.
And you'll know then what we're capable of. So stop fucking around.
But here's a question, okay? Going forward, what do you think if there was a new war? And when you look at
I mean,
things,
New World War.
Sorry, a new world war.
A global conflict.
If there was a global conflict, okay, or even wars in the future, because we even see it loads now in I was going to say in Harvey Norman, we even see it loads in Ukraine, where drones were sold out and where loads of drones were bought from Harvey Norman
Oh, right.
to be sent over to Ukraine.
Okay. Who, what?
Ukrainians.
One of the
right.
biggest kind of...
Okay, so they come in the shop, buy a load of drones, send them back home.
Yeah, and the Ukrainians are using them for things like dropping a grenade into a tank if they leave the lid open. And believe it or not, someone flew a
left the lid
drone.
open.
Like, it became there's a huge, the kind of small amateur modder market that would be like tinkering with cars or motorbikes kind of thing here in other countries. In Ukraine, there was already a kind of a enthusiast world for drones. But then when the war started, everyone got into it who isn't actually on the front fighting. And they're all just coming up with their own. And it's literally not some military grade drone. These are drones that, as Donald said, you literally buy in a local shop, and you can just modify them and attach an explosive onto them and just fly them out there. And someone actually managed to fly a drone from Ukraine, I don't know how many hundreds of miles it is, to Moscow and try to blow up it was never going to do big damage, but explode against the Kremlin kind of thing. And I don't know how many hundreds of miles it is and how it would have taken so many hours. You would have been like, I don't know, where they have rotating shifts of people flying it constantly.
How the hell they must have strapped about 40 batteries to it.
I know. I don't know how the hell they did it. But there is a real kind of a enthusiast kind of groups are competing with each other to come up with different models and designs and better functionality and better lethality and that sort of stuff.
Even DJI, the drone maker, the DJI said it's part of their policy now. You can't use our drones for war.
How do you enforce that?
They can't. It's just that DJI's stock, the DJI market value doesn't want to be affected. So they're like, you cannot do this with you can't use it.
But secretly, they're like, keep buying our drones and blowing them up.
But when you look at the likes of Elon Musk, do you know that Elon Musk is working on a life-sized android that?
Yes. What do you call it? Optimus.
Yes, I think it is. Yeah,
course.
yeah.
Oh dear.
So imagine when there's like,
Just go all out to say, I'm building Ultron.
But imagine when there's like ChatGPT flaming 6 or 7 inside the brain of this thing, and when you look at all the technology that Elon Musk is working on, it's the most Bond villain like thing coming together right in front of our eyes. I wonder what will the face of war be like in the future.
Well, I think we already kind of discussed this with the episode of the ways. What is it? The Armageddon episode. Ways the world can end. I mean, it's conceivable that you'll have androids. But again, even to zoom back to a bit more basic, if you look at how AI can be implemented into war, and especially war like Ukraine and Russia is the more stereotypical, we'll line up on one side of the field with the green uniforms and you line up on the other side of the field with the beige uniforms and we'll try to kill each other. But the war is like the war that America was fighting in Afghanistan for the last 2 decades, which they lost. And of course they lost it, because if you're going to use a bloody Hellfire missile to blow up a guy standing on a street and accidentally blow up a school bus of kids right beside him, but we figured that was worth it because he was a high value target. Now you have 20 dead kids and 20 other families that are going to be all 20 new bunches of terrorists. You don't kill terrorism by blowing it up. Someone should tell Israel that. It's so stupid. But imagine when you can have something that's the size of, and I'm referencing a Black Mirror episode here, the size of a bee. You just have its own little AI program in it, and you just upload into it the facial recognition thing of every terrorist in Afghanistan. And then you just send out 1 million of these bees. They're disposable. Let them fly around, and the minute you see someone, fly like a bullet right into his eye, blow his brains out.
Okay,
job done.
Barry, did you hear what Mart said there, and did you understand it?
I did.
Okay, here's a question, and maybe the question to finish off this bit. Mm-hmm. Let's say those 10,000 bees were made. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. In deism, by the way, 10,000 was seen as the biggest number, because the way we say millions.
Okay.
In deism, you'd say 10,000. That's something you didn't ask for and didn't need to know.
Okay.
Absolutely.
But so let's say 10,000 of these bee drones were made. Okay. Mm-hmm. Do you think if the Irish government had a chance to buy them, that we should buy them for our army?
No, because we're not fighting that type of war. No, it would be a different, while we're neutral, we're not on the front.
I'm just thinking how effective they'd be against the scroats in O'Connell Street.
Well, yeah, no, what I'm thinking of is these would be the things you would target if you're looking for a high-value target. We have our deck of cards with the 52 highest value, kind of thing. But if you just I want to kill, if the Ukrainians we want to kill every Russian soldier over there. Yes, you just launch them over there and just say everyone.
Do you think the bees should be sold to the Ukrainian army then?
I don't think.
Now, bearing in mind these bees don't exist, okay?
Yeah.
If they existed, okay, if Elon Musk not Elon Musk, I shouldn't say that. If some company said, hey, we have this technology, should you think they should be used?
I mean, I guess just to be clear, I'm not saying I think they should or shouldn't be. You started talking about Optimus and the future of war,
Yeah.
and I was saying you're way more likely to see something like this
Oh, right. Okay.
and
yeah.
way sooner than you're going to see a robot army marching across a field to kill people. Do you know? Yeah, like, yeah. So, I mean, do I think it doesn't really matter what I think? You're going to see this because it's already a law. I think, what is it? The Geneva Convention said no weapon system is allowed to have automated capabilities for targeting and execution.
What?
That's
Really?
already there. And there's
Yeah.
already at least one instance, I don't exactly know where they suspect that someone deployed a weapon that did that. But never mind whether
But
someone...
look at that. Sorry.
Go on.
Like, an ICBM is a targeted flaming...
Yes, but you see, why do you think, right, when you have these Reaper drones flying over Afghanistan with Hellfire missiles stuck on the bottom of them, and there's no person on board, there's someone sitting in Las Vegas in a big metal, basically mobile home, with an Xbox controller in his hand and the camera in front of him.
Oh, you're
and
saying it's to justify it,
He
is it?
looks, it's not to justify. That human is there for only one reason.
Yeah.
The law says you can't have AI do the targeting and execution, so AI does everything. The flying, the targeting, the everything. But the person will get his Xbox controller, press B. Now the human has done that, and then everything else happens with AI again. But you have a human in the mix. So the truth is, it doesn't matter about these laws, because if you're in a war where it's an existential threat to you and your people and your family and everyone you know, laws don't matter anymore. If if China and America go to war, and if it really looks like this is going to be global and nukes are flying, people are going to...
For say now, you just described the game.
Oh,
War. War never changes.
yeah, but
Literally.
actually war, the funny, it does change all the time. And the essential existential kind of threat to your people is fundamentally the same whether you're a tribe 50,000 years ago and there's a tribe over the hill coming over to kill you,
Yeah.
or whether it's today with America and China going to be fighting over Taiwan or whatever. But at the same time, once it comes down to brass tacks, this stuff won't matter. Because if you're going to die unless you suddenly just break all these laws.
Of course, yeah.
So these drones and things, AI stuff, that's the future of war, and that is going to happen. And do I think it? No, I think it shouldn't happen, but it will. It doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't matter what anyone thinks, ultimately.
Barry, any closing thoughts?
Make love, not war. That's my closing thought.
I have one quick question before we disappear. Do you think you will see a nuke used in anger, in war, in your lifetime?
I hope not.
But do you think so?
I don't know. I'm going to stay optimistic and say no.
Right?
I think so.
I definitely think so.
Yeah, I think there's too many countries with nukes now. We managed to scrape through the Cold War when only a few did. But now you have countries with nukes who are saying, we think that other country over there shouldn't exist, should be wiped off the earth.
Yeah,
and all
but here's
this
a-
kind of-
Then again, sorry.
No, go on.
No, I was going to say, then again, there's little, like, this is ridiculous, but there's little nukes and there's big nukes, you know? There's a little nuke that would just take out the Galway shopping centre. And then there's an Ivy Mike that would take out Connacht.
So here's the thing, you mentioned the Cold War there. Do you know that it's the Cold War that gave us the concept of first world countries and second world countries and third world countries?
Actually, no.
No.
Yeah, so here's the thing. First world countries started in the Cold War. They're allies to the United States. Second world countries were allies of Russia. And third world countries were countries that had no affiliation. That's where that came from. It had nothing to do with prosperity or, you know, we say nowadays, we say a third world country. We talk about a poor country. That's what we're saying. But in the original laying out of that, it was first world countries are
Fascinating.
allies of the... what I
Cool.
just said. So, yeah.
So Ireland in the 50s was the first world country.
But I suppose technically we would have been a third world country, wouldn't we? Because we were neutral.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
we were neutral. I
Going
forgot
back to
about
that
the
old
neutrality. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's it, guys. Will we finish off with a quote from Winston Churchill?
If you have one.
Go for it, since we have our new fancy soundboard.
And
We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets.
He really
We shall
sounds
fight in
bored.
the hills.
he does.
We shall never surrender.
He did sound bored.
We shall fight in the hills.
If we have to.
Guys, that's it. This was cool. We will...
Sorry, I have one last thing
Oh,
to
yeah,
say.
go on, yeah,
What's
go on.
deadlier than war? What's 3 times deadlier than war?
3 wars.
Excellent. I love that answer, but no. Work. Remember that. Numbers we have: 237,000 people died in war in 2002, and over 1 million people die every year in work. So, yeah.
Be careful out there.
Be
Make
careful
love,
out
not
there.
work.
Yeah. Make love,
Okay.
not work or war.
Yeah. All right, that's it, guys. Until we meet again, that's it. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.